Hello, I'm Scott Bradford, the Choral Education Director for ISSMA, and I'll be guiding you through the Phase 2 endorsement training for the certification process. I'm very excited for this training and the online accessibility. Thank you for viewing today and your interest in the amazing event for our Indiana high school students. You will see a 45-minute video reviewing the adjudication sheets, specifically focused on concert organizations for junior high, middle school, elementary, and high school choral ensembles. After you feel comfortable with this material, you will need to take the questionnaire for completion of this Phase 2 training. Let's begin. As an adjudicator, you can become certified in one or more areas, depending on your interest, training, and skill sets. However, this Phase 2 training focuses specifically on JME and high school concert events. Our hope is after viewing this information, you'll feel comfortable with the rubric, descriptors, and ISSMA rules, and you will see how properly using the adjudication sheet will actually assist you in providing assessment for the performers. Let's take a look at JME classifications. Teachers may enter their ensembles in one of 5 groups. Group 5 organizations, formerly elementary in designation, consisted of students in grades 5 and 6, or only first-year performers. Group 4 organizations performed very easy music and are organizations with a majority of first and second-year performers. Group 3 perform easy music. Group 2 performs medium easy music, and then Group 1 performs music of medium difficulty. Keep in mind that you are judging elementary, middle, and junior high students with limited years of performance experience. So be realistic. There is a difference in the expectations between a Group 3 treble ensemble and a Group 1 advanced ensemble. You can expect basic techniques of proper singing and blending, but the vocabulary you use needs to focus on the level of maturity and that level of ensemble. You should have a slight more tolerance for the development of technique for a Group 4 ensemble than, let's say, a Group 3 ensemble. And reversely, for a Group 1 ensemble, you should be able to expect them to handle the demands of their literature. You're the expert. Your training and expectations, as well as your knowledge of groups you've heard before, has already placed a standard in your ear or in your head. However, again, I caution you, the organization should, however, be judged on how well they perform the music for which the director has selected for them, and according to the rubric and descriptors on the adjudication sheet. As an example, junior high ensembles shouldn't be compared to our collegiate experience or advanced high school organizations that you've heard. Tone quality, breath support, and other descriptors should be evaluated on the appropriate level for their age group, entry level, and repertoire chosen. Yet, if a group does enter, let's say like a Group 4 ensemble selects a Group 1 level piece, then you have every right to expect that they'll be able to perform that chosen music for their program. At this point, I'd like to point out that there is a 3-part minimum requirement that you'll see on the slide in the blue font. This requirement is for selected numbers for group entering levels 3, 2, or 1. The director is charged with selecting literature that upholds the integrity of the group that they are entering. Questions usually come with the interpretation of this rule when actual musical scores are in your hand. At least 50% of the selected literature must be in 3 parts to satisfy this requirement. When looking at the score, Group 4 is allowed 2 parts, and Group 5 is the only classification that can sing in complete unison for one of their entire selections. Required numbers for junior high Group 1 and high school Groups 3, 2, and 1 must match the voicing indicated on the required list. Groups should enter the same type of performing ensemble based upon the voicing of the music being performed. So, just because you see males up there in treble ensembles, you can't assume that they're in the wrong event. The literature chosen is the determining factor. Please allow flexibility in this voicing. Directors may elect to have females sing the tenor part, or unchanged male voices sing the alto or soprano lines. And a group can be entered as a treble choir may sing SSA music with a few of the voices singing down the octave. High school classifications. In high school classifications, we eliminate Group 5 for obvious reasons, and we increase the demand for parts in selected music. Group 1 JME division, you'll see Group 1, 2, and 3 for high school division requires the director to select music from a pre-required list for that classification or level. The head judge will receive a copy of these repertory lists the day of the contest to verify performing selections. And you'll see Group 1 has an additional requirement of at least one of the selections must be an a cappella piece. A simple clarification may help here. A cappella, by dictionary definition, means without the accompaniment of instruments. This often comes from directors who ask the question, can I use percussion instruments if called for in the score? As you can see from the slide, Groups 1 and 2 now require 4-part literature for their selected numbers, while Group 3 organizations go back to the 3-part requirement of earlier. Group 4 organizations, it requires with a minimum of 2 parts that the director has selected for their programming. And again, I remind you that this criteria only affects selected repertoire. A printed copy of these classifications will be given to you when you judge. You must look at the number of parts, required repertoire, accompaniment, and a cappella considerations for each class and level of entry. I also would like to mention that when you're adjudicating treble and male choirs, that you look at the 3 parts cover such standard literature for TTB, SSA, or 3-part repertoire. There is a minimum of 2 parts still allowed for the easier music and new performers in Group 4. Challenges will arise when looking at the scores. Piano or piano recording is the only acceptable accompaniment, and instruments other than piano that are used in the choral performance must be notated in the published score and performed by students. You will hear organizations that have changed the required selection from what is printed on their entry. Please be flexible with this decision, and the head judge should check that the new replacement selection is on the required list for that group level. Simply put, if it's not on the list, with the correct arranger, composer, and voicing, it doesn't satisfy the requirement. Please determine all penalties before releasing your scores, and if you have any questions with this, contact your host or someone from the school will contact the ISSMA office. As you have seen from the previous slides, each performing ensemble must sing 3 numbers. Only upper group levels, marked in burgundy on this slide, for the high school groups 3, 2, and 1, and junior high division group 1 have a required number. This slide reminds you that the vocal groups in group 4 for high school and junior divisions 2 through 5 have 3 selected numbers. You will need to assess the selected numbers to see that they are satisfying the 3-part rule for at least 50% of the duration of the piece. At times you will also see obvious copyright infringement. These violations should be reported to the site host. Each panel will consist of 3 judges. If you are selected as the head judge, you will be asked to provide recorded verbal critique during the performance. Be specific. Balancing the 3 C's of compliments, criticism, and suggestions for course of improvement should be seen on your sheet. If technology fails, or should I say when technology fails, what the director receives from your written markings should verify and support the assigned points from the rubric. This sheet is an example of exactly that. You can see they've marked song 1 and 2 at the top and left all the other comments blank until the bottom, where they've marked tape. Ask yourself this question: what is the main point of improvement that I can give a director or the performing members? Once you've formulated an answer to your own question, put that at the bottom of the sheet. It's not a good thing to put tape or comments on tape at the bottom of the adjudication sheet alone. Besides, we're way past the cassette tape days. It's also not a very valid assessment to write very little comments or to use repetitive comments on specific descriptors. If you write the same comment in each evaluation area, the performers don't receive tangible information that will help them for improvement. So try to use the vocabulary for your written and your spoken commentary that reflect the level of performance and the level of the event and the expectations of the music. Considering your adjudication sheet, clarity becomes very important. If you have handwriting like mine, few people would be able to read it. Just consider the amount of students and young teachers today that have difficulty in reading cursive writing. But that's a whole different training session. Want to remind you that the middle section should be for specific marks, referencing specific measures in the music and identifying both achievements or concerns for each of the categories. This is an important point, and yet many judges leave this out. I recommend you circle, check mark, star, underline, or any other method to mark the descriptors on the left side while listening to the performance. Then use the space in the middle to mark measure numbers or brief comments that support these markings on the left. There isn't a lot of room to use complete sentences, but do make markings in the middle section while listening as well to remind yourself of the overall performance. Then use these markings to assign the points on the rubric on the right side. Even a really good performance should show support for your rating. As you can see from this slide, it is still vital that we're providing authentic feedback. We ask that with the new sheets that you use the design to help you with the analysis part and then trust your analysis for your markings. Our rubric shows both degree and frequency of error. Take a look at what you'll be using during your assessment. You'll see that it's a half-point system. You'll be asked to evaluate flaws or errors as major and minor. Again, tolerance should be considered, but you'll also be looking at the frequency, how often, some, continuous, etc. When giving a 4, unacceptable in every detail, this should be used seldom. If you do use it, please document the reasons for this marking. This may be a good time to mention developing musicians and inclusion choirs. You're going to hear a variety of choirs, from audition ensembles to those with multiple directors, and the choral ensemble where every child is required to take a music course and participate in this event. So be realistic. Assess what you hear and also what you see. If there's a child, an individual singer that's over-singing or is affecting the balance or dynamics, try not to belabor or overreact. But do score and evaluate and comment on what you've seen. Mention the situation and how it affects the music, offer suggestions, and move on. Don't belabor again one single point. Be constructive, not destructive. I'm now going to cover the descriptors by giving examples. Every judge is different. Their background, experience level, or even pet peeve. Use some of these as possibilities of what to listen to during your critique. For a Group 1 ensemble, you can expect the students to sing in tune, refine the tuning within a harmonic or polyphonic passage. But for a Group 4 ensemble, intonation problems fall under some minor flaws or frequent minor flaws. Their knowledge and depth of knowledge will be different than the Group 1 ensemble. This is where tolerance as a judge comes in. At a Group 4 level, their experience and ability to control intonation may be more of a common thing, where with an advanced ensemble or Group 1 literature, you should expect them to sing in tune. You can discuss vowel match, color modifications, vibrato and timbre, as it affects the warmth or vertical sonorities. You can talk about the approach to the note. Singing on top or below a pitch is something they'll understand. That goes with that pendulum of knowledge or depth of knowledge. For beginning ensembles, wrong notes can be heard as intonation. Matching pitches is often difficult at this level. Don't let this fall under both wrong notes as far as note accuracy and poor intonation. You decide where it best fits the descriptor. While adjudicating, many of your comments will overlap in the categories or descriptors. Tone quality, for instance, will be affected by breathing, control and placement, resonance, intonation, wrong notes, as I mentioned earlier. Please try to offer commentary in each of the categories that's unique to the music that you're hearing or the ensemble you're seeing. When listening to tone quality, you're going to listen to the overall aspect of the voices as they sing together. What do they sound like? What color or imagery comes to mind? You can discuss nasality, the fullness of sound within ranges or tessitura, the equality or match of color through vowels or phrases. In discussing blend, this is a more difficult descriptor. Blend is not balance. Blend is tone color, the evenness of sound amongst the sections. With breathing, let's discuss the difference between junior high and high school. If you see shoulders raised, shallow breathing, poor diaphragmatic movement or usage, these are obvious words these kids will understand. You can obviously talk about the preparation of breathing, breathing between phrases or words, the use of air. These are all things that their teacher would have worked with them on. You can talk about relaxed or sustained breathing, timing. Is it hurried? Are they sustaining notes and moving air? At the high school level, you can add more depth to your commentary. You can talk about breathing through the nose and mouth, the manner of the entrance on a vowel or on an oo, the shape of the inhaled air. You can talk about breathing within the music, the section, or staggered breathing. The same terms from junior high can apply. You just want to talk more about mastery. Give specific comments of the music to help them further in their progression of the performance or other performances. Be careful to stay away from the common ideas of support the sound, use more air. Make sure you give specific commentary toward each category and each descriptor. Note accuracy. This is basically describing whether the students know their music. There's a pendulum of knowledge and understanding. How well have they performed what they were given? And go beyond this in your critique. Talk about the accuracy of entrances, notes within a phrase or the runs, leaps between pitches. At high school level, discuss quality of the shifts, accidentals and chromatics, melodic lines, again, leaps or intervallic relationships. These kids should understand a higher level of knowledge and understanding of terminology. You can also discuss ascending and descending passages, sequences within the score, the approach to notes, or sections from soprano to alto. Are the tenors getting the part as they come in on an entrance? You can discuss the accuracy of harmonies and divisi. Any of these ideas and concepts I'm suggesting, you already know. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what to listen for and how to focus in on the categories and descriptors for an accurate assessment. Rhythmic accuracy, like note accuracy, is a little less subjective. In this category, specifically be careful that you're not discussing tempo. Steadiness is there as a descriptor, but not tempo. So it's fair to discuss rushing and the effects of rushing, or the clarity of a rhythmic figure. But stay away from ideas of how fast or slow, or director's choice of metronomic markings. Discuss that later on. Evaluate items of rhythmic complexity, triplet versus eighth notes, syncopation, the values of rest, and duration within a phrase, within a rhythmic figure, or at the end of a cadence. You can talk about accentation and the handling of different meters. Again, be specific about the score and the rhythms as it relates to the music you're hearing and seeing. Developing choirs will have a lower success rate with things like diction and enunciation. You can talk about beginning and final consonants, chewing vowels or shaping vowels. Are their vowels pure and appropriate to the language of use? At the high school level, the descriptors for diction are excellent. Do discuss clarity, pronunciation, the consonants, and diphthongs. Talk about creating inflection, use of diction at lower dynamic levels or intense passages. Is it cutting through? Is it appropriate? You also have a higher frequency of a foreign language, so dialect and inflection and coloration is going to be something that shows up more in the literature. Considering both dynamics and balance. When listening for balance, you listen to the overall ensemble. But is the individual causing the imbalance? Is there a hot dog causing a problem with this? Is it a poor singing technique within a section or individual? Or is it just underdeveloped listening skills? Give a specific critique and solution, again, to the problem. Listen to balance between section to section, during dynamic differences, crescendos and decrescendos. Remember, this is only one category, and don't overstate or overreact to an imbalance problem. Comments to not only about control of dynamics, choice of dynamics, but accuracy of what's in the printed score. Interpretation and musicianship. Notice here is the appropriate place to talk about tempo, as well as style of the piece, gospel, classical, syncopation, and jazz. You can give them anything that will help in their performance or the evaluation of the performance you're hearing. Comments about expression, style, and phrasing are what you see in the score. Be careful about offering opinions, but do offer solutions and suggestions. Here's a place to talk about your teacher choices and the tempos and the style expressionism areas that match the score markings. We all know the challenges of a classroom, so be careful when addressing the teacher. The students will be listening to these recordings and seeing these comments. As a director, I always told my students the impression they would leave starts at the time they walk on stage to the time they exit. However, I do want to caution you here that you want to make sure most of your comments are given from performance beginning to performance end. It is of course appropriate to mention the way they enter the risers or the room, but it shouldn't be the bulk of your evaluation. In this category, you want to evaluate the performance attributes, the focus and dedication of the ensemble, how well they pay attention to the director, sincerity of expression, their facial energy, things that affect the music that aren't necessarily within the score. I hope my comments from the preceding slides will be food for thought, start you thinking about each category as you adjudicate. I also hope that it starts you thinking about the differences between middle school, intermediate, and advanced ensembles, as well as the vocabulary you use between junior high, middle school, and high school ensembles. Finalizing your sheet for each performance. Be sure that you've marked the rubric for each category. This is a common mistake that slows down the process. I've seen this mistake happen at solo ensemble, show choir invitationals, as well as organization contests. Create a routine to check yourself before passing in your assessment. Be sure to initial any erasures, and when possible, avoid these because this leaves an impression to the teacher that you're adjusting your score to fit the rubric. Add your total points. Make sure you've circled the rating they've earned, as well as any infractions at the box to the left. Check your math and sign your form. I want to discuss a few infractions and penalties that may bring up questions while you're adjudicating. Remember that for comment only is never used at JME or high school organization events. Know that you will receive individual instructions at your judges meeting prior to adjudicating, and you'll also receive a copy of rules and regulations from our office prior to the assignment. Vocal groups may choose to use music without penalty. Directors, teachers, or anyone may accompany the organization at these choral events. If an a cappella composition is utilized, it must be performed a cappella. All performances must be live. Pre-recorded, taped, or sequenced music, if used, must be in the original score. Piano or piano recording is the only acceptable accompaniment for vocal organizations. I leave you with some general thoughts of the trade. We work with people, and people have opinions and are quick to make judgments. Their impression of you, and ultimately ISSMA, comes from your professionalism. What you do and say behind the scenes will give an impression to parent volunteers, site hosts, students, and all involved in the day's events. Remember the atmosphere of the room, how you react to the singers and performers, as well as the director. Be courteous at all times. Warning, cell phones always appear as if you're not listening or focused on the performance at hand. Even if you're just checking the time, this can give the impression that you're not ready for their assessment. Dressing professional isn't something we can assume anymore. Our culture accepts now dress shorts, footwear, and casual attire in many situations, but we ask that you dress for success. We also ask that judges don't confer during the assessment or get up out of their performance area, as this leaves an impression that you're discussing the scores. Thank you for taking the time to view this video. We do appreciate your dedication to ISSMA events and your expertise that you're sharing with Indiana musicians. To complete Phase 2 training, reminder that you must go to ISSMAacademy.net and hit the link for the questionnaire. Thank you once again.